The air is crisp, the fog is thick, and something lurks in every shadow. Gates of the Underworld now open at Kings Island for Halloween Haunt. Hello, everyone. I'm Don. He's Ryan. This is Tower Topics.
Tower Topics is a podcast by Kings Island fans for Kings Island fans, because that's who we are and that's who we care about. Let's kick this off by thanking our Prestige members. I want to give a big shout out to Miss Mandy, 1983, Lil Mac, 21, Brian Hauser, 330T, Logan Lipper, Aaron Board, Jacob Fix, Damon Barnes, Dakota Cole, Eric Rao, Dustin Jackson, Songs for Smiku, Lack Ray, Galaxy B-Boy, Medic 302, Eastern Coaster guys and girls, Justin Y, and Mike Garrett. Thank you for supporting Tower Topics at the highest level. That's the prestige level. If you want to be involved in Tower Topics, there's a link in the description. Members get early access to the videos, exclusive content, exclusive live streams, and some tiers we can get some free stuff. So hit that link if you want to be on board.
Seems like every episode, Ryan, there's always a few new names that you're calling out, and that's always good to see. We appreciate the support.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
But, Halloween Haunt, it's here. It opens tonight, September 19th, as this episode drops. So, Ryan, I know you are a big Haunt fan. Are you going to be there tonight?
I'm going to try to be there tonight. I've got some stuff going on in the evening, and I'm going to try to get there as close to open as possible. But I'm very eager to see not just how the event is, but how the crowd reacts to it. Mm-hmm. We've had a little bit of reporting out of Cedar Point. We'll get to that.
Right. And Carowinds.
Exactly. So, but Kings Island's a different beast. I mean, I would say it's more similar to Carowinds than it is Cedar Point as far as season pass holders are concerned. But there are two new mazes. There's the Dragon's Lair, and there's the Conjuring Beyond Fear, which isn't really a maze. It's more of an experience.
Right. Yeah, exactly with that. And that has, both Carowinds and Cedar Point, it's drawn really good reviews in terms of what the maze is. Everybody's saying it's very immersive, definitely, elevated over any type of an experience they've ever seen before at a Legacy Cedar Fair Park Halloween event, which is great to hear. But the downside to it is that they send in like 8 to 10 people at a time. It's about a 60 people per hour capacity. So the wait times have been very long. So that has been a little bit of a negative to it, but really good reviews about it. And that was exciting to hear. The one thing that wasn't great to hear was that at both parks, they didn't feel that the returning mazes had improved, much, if at all. And that was a little bit disappointing for everybody that had opened their wallets and purchased those wristbands to be able to go through the indoor mazes.
Yeah, and it was reflected in some of the wait times too. If you look here, Slaughterhouse 2 hours after opening. I mean, this is at Cedar Point. It looks like no one's even touched it. Bloodbath opened at 6 using Han Express Pass with 0 people in line on the first Saturday. And for you audio listeners, there's just nobody in line at all. This is all from the Fun Food blog, which you can find on X. Right. Finally, Freak Show was always a consistent long line, about 20 people in the regular line, no one in Express. So this is the first weekend. And that kind of gives me a little bit of it tears me in 2 different directions. This is bilateral because on one hand, it's too early to make a judgment of oh, this totally failed. They need to pivot. But on the other hand, wouldn't the most loyal haunt people be the ones that show up on opening night at Cedar Point on a Thursday night?
Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And those photos you showed are from a Saturday.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the busiest night of whether it's Halloween weekends for their haunt, whether it's at Carowinds, Kings Island. Saturdays are always the busiest night. And that's the one night that you usually want to avoid because there's more bodies in the way. But that is not a good sign that on that first Saturday that's what it looked like. And, while it looked like there's a line, for the Conjuring and the wait time is long, it doesn't take a lot of people when you're only putting about 60 people through per hour for that line to be backed up. But everybody says the maze was really good. So this is a tip for anyone going to Halloween Haunt this weekend. If you're going to do the Conjuring at Kings Island, make sure you do it first because if you were to get in line, say 8 o'clock, 8:30, that might be pretty much the rest of your night. 2 or 3 hours to, you're going to wait in line, and it's a 20-minute experience, and you're not going to get in line and 15 minutes later you're through. That's just not going to happen. So it would be best to, as a pro tip, to get that out of the way first, and then go attack the other mazes. If it's like Cedar Point, you're not going to have a wait for the other mazes. That nobody was really doing that too much. The one thing that was noted by the Fun Food blog is that the outdoor maze, Cornstalkers, when that opened 8 o'clock, it did have a little bit of a line, but that's also the people that maybe they'd already done the other mazes and they were just waiting for that one to open. It wasn't terribly long, but longer than the other ones that they had experienced, but not a really good look on the opening night. And some of the reviews about the existing mazes is just that it's the same as it was before, and if that's what happens at Kings Island, we're hearing that it's not going to be the case, that they have elevated that a little bit. They've spent some money, put in some new props in that, but we'll wait to see what your feedback is. Our listeners will be counting on you to let us know as you visit this weekend, what your thoughts were on not only The Conjuring, Order of the Dragon, but also the returning mazes and the scare zones as well. But one of the things you got to think about with Halloween Haunt always this time of the year, Ryan, is that there is some urgency to visit. Limited time event. You got about 6 weeks to get there, 6 weekends to get there, and you want to prepare yourself. So if you've never been to Halloween Haunt, this is not your regular night at Kings Island.
Yeah, exactly. And again, it's too early as of this recording to tell if this is going to translate to Kings Island, because I think Kings Island's a different beast than Cedar Point, a little bit more similar to Carowinds, which had a similar situation, but I know of a lot of people that bought like the season-long pass thing. I don't know how many they sold. They played a little monkey business with the pricing. But
what's a lot? Okay, so everybody, a lot of times people always throw out, a lot of people are saying this, a lot of people are saying that. In your book, what's a lot?
7 or 8.
Okay.
I'm saying, like, generally speaking, a lot of people I've talked to have bought it, which isn't a huge sample, but I think it is somewhat telling as a small sample size. As far as Ryan's friends are concerned, a lot of them have that pass, but so
and one of I've heard from people that have bought it, and I've heard from a number of individuals that said they're not going to. They'll just go there for the rides and the atmosphere. They'll go through the scare zones. They liked the episode that we recently did about the scare zones. They said that's good enough for me. If they're going to make me pay for the mazes, I'm not doing that. And I appreciate those that are going to stick to their guns with that. But we do want to hear from those that go through all the mazes and just let us know, it is Slaughterhouse, is Hotel St. Michelle, Kilmart. Are those mazes elevated over previous years? Did you see more scare actors in there? Those are the kind of things we want to know from your visits this weekend.
We're coming back on Monday, and Don and I will have experienced Haunt by then, and our field reporter, Noah, will have experienced Haunt by then. We're going to come back with our consensus as to, do you pay for the mazes? Do you not? Do you just pay for The Conjuring? Do you do all of them? Do you do none of them? Now, I will say this. One thing that we're trying to work against this, but it seems like in general, Order of the Dragon, the maze that I call something else involving a dragon every time I bring it up. I think I called it Dragon's Lair earlier. That's one that I think is really exciting. And Kings Island actually recently dropped a video on social media with one of their techs, Ben Hauser, to talk about it. So let's take a look at it here and see what they had to say. We will in a second. There we go. There's Ben.
What's up, Kings Island? My name is Ben Hauser. I am the area manager of entertainment technical production here at Kings Island. We are here at the Order of the Dragon maze across from the Banshee roller coaster and action zone. Inside this maze, you're going to come across vampires and maybe even a dragon that is super scary and spooky for you. My favorite part of this maze is the Great Hall. You never know what you will find in the shadows and what is lurking overhead. Be sure to check out all of our existing mazes. We have a lot of enhancements that we've put into all of these mazes for you guys. We have Corner, Hotel, St. Michelle, Alien Abyss, Kilmart, and we have Slaughterhouse. Hotel, a fan favorite. We got some brand new animatronics and activations that we're going into. Kilmart got a brand new activation and lighting package. Slaughterhouse, we got a whole new experience for you as well. One of my favorite guest enhancements that we have done this year is the brand new cornered maze layout. We have added so much overhead, a new layout, a lot more props. It's really going to be an amazing experience for our guests. And you can't forget about the enhanced outdoor scare zones that we have added to this year. You have International Street with our feature creatures, you have Pumpkin Eater, you have Hooked, you have Coney Mall, and you have Abandoned. Be sure to check them out and don't get spooked.
All right. Well, that says it all. I will tell you this. The thing about Ben is that if he's excited for something, he can't really fake it. And he's usually a pretty good judge of like, hey, this is going to be good, or yeah, this will be fine. And I could kind of feel his excitement in that video.
Yeah. Some of the listeners to our show said after they saw that post drop on Kings Island's channels was that exactly what you guys said they should be doing is, not just say that the mazes are an upcharge, tell us why, they're going to be better this year. What are you doing in these mazes to elevate it? And they go and do it. But of course they don't watch Tower Topic, so we wouldn't have influenced that video at all, right? I'm
just glad that they used somebody that actually has a stake in it, because it could easily be just some social media person, or they've had like the few marketing people they still have in videos about buy your gold pass MVP sale. So Ben having a stake in this, having done probably, I don't know what his involvement is. I don't talk to him regularly, but I assume that he had a lot to do with all this stuff, because classically he has. And, he can talk about it with such enthusiasm and stuff. I think that was a really good move.
It was good. It was good to put that video out there, something that we've been asking, them to do, to explain, when they keep saying that it's an elevated experience, what are you doing in these existing mazes? Because that was the number one question that not only we had, but a lot of our listeners had is, how are those going to be different? I don't want to pay for the same old maze, again, that I've been through 100 times, so it was good that they did that. But, one of the things I'm hearing, Ryan, from, people involved with the park, is that they feel that the Order of the Dragon, may be the better of the two mazes between that and the Conjuring. If you're looking for, when you go to haunt, if you're looking for the scare, type mazes, the jump scares and those kind of things, that's going to have more of that. That's going to be a little bit more, intense, scary than what the Conjuring is. The Conjuring is going to be more storytelling, more immersive. You have a role when you go in that they give you. So, two different types of experiences. But if you're, someone that really enjoys a good scare, I think Order of the Dragon might deliver that a little bit better for you.
Yeah, I think Order of the Dragon is going to be a lot more traditional when it comes to haunted houses. One thing that is a bit concerning is it looks like they did a little bit to add to all the mazes, but they can't rest on those laurels, because next year it's not an enhanced house anymore. Slaughterhouse isn't enhanced because it's the same again. So in order to get people to pay, especially because, Ben talked about, we added this activation point, this lighting and stuff. And that's something that I would notice. And it's something you
didn't say anything about we, doubled the number of scare actors or anything like that.
Oh, they're not doing that. I don't.
No, but there was nothing about scare. We've increased the scare actors. And that's one of the questions a lot of people have is, are there going to be more in there? So we didn't get that answer, but it was good to see that they aren't leaving them untouched, that there are going to be those enhancements to it. And I'm pretty excited about that. I'd heard, prior to that video coming out that, they had purchased some props and things to add into the existing mazes to kind of help elevate them a little bit. But it's good to see, especially if you're now charging for those mazes.
Yeah. But again, it's great this year, and it'll be exciting and probably worth the money to see what's new if you've been through these houses a bunch of times. My fear, though, is that if they added one or two things to these mazes, somebody that goes through and maybe goes through them once a year or every couple of years, they're going to go through and think it's the same, and then even at that, next year, if it is the same, you can't really charge for it again.
No, it cannot be the same. Yeah. Once you start charging for something, it can't be the same experience year after year. You have to do something to just, change it up, maybe have 2 new houses every year. So you got to do something a little bit different to warrant the cost that you're now passing on to your guests.
Yeah. And I've got a feeling that there's going to be at least one new marquee maze every year, and they'll replace these. Like they'll probably kill off Alien Abyss or Kilmar. I think those two are the ones that are the good candidates to be replaced. Both are really good spaces too to do decent haunted houses. The problem they're always going to have though is that, you know, for $10 or 15 or 20 or whatever, depending on the night, you can get away with 5 mazes that are, you know, a 5-minute walkthrough. But you're never going to have the length that they have at like Land of Illusion and places like that, where, you know, the haunted trail is 25 or so minutes. I actually timed it. It's a half mile or so and about 22 minutes to walk through their trail. So these are probably 3 and 5 minutes.
One of the things Ben mentioned that I was excited about was hearing him talk about Slaughterhouse, because that had been a maze that was getting a little long in the tooth. You know, like the concept and everything for it, but it was good to hear him say that, you know, new life and that is, or death, whatever you want to say, is being breathed into that maze.
Yeah. He acted like it was going to be a whole new experience. You know, he talked about a new activation point in Kilmart, big stuff to do with corn stalkers. And this was my first time ever watching this video was with you. So forgive me if I get some of the information wrong, because I'm playing off memory. But Slaughterhouse, I remember him saying that it's going to be a pretty substantial change. So that's kind of exciting.
I was excited to hear that.
I like the animatronics and stuff, so I am excited for that. The cool part about the animatronics is if they have them, they just have them. You know, if they hire 800 scare actors, which is 25% more, well, you know, half of them are going to quit by the 3rd week anyway. So go through the first week, you know.
I remember there was a time when I was there that we were looking for more than 600 monsters every year. You know, now it's just kind of a fraction of that number. It's not anywhere close to 600 anymore. But hopefully they beefed it up a little bit this year over what it's been the past couple years.
Did you interpret what he said about the scare zones, that they would be enhanced? Because he kind of breezed over them, but I'm not sure if he meant there's going to be more in the scare zones, or hey, we also have scare zones.
You know, maybe it's more, you know, the decor or something like that, or an animatronic, or, you know, just something like that being added to it. When I was there a couple of weeks ago, you know, far from done in terms of setting everything up, but you know, what they had out, you know, it looked good, and you know, as a guest, it got me excited for the haunt season.
Yeah, so haunt runs Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, and select Thursdays through November 1st. Not recommended for children under the age of 13. If you have children under the age of 13, there's a trick-or-treat event during the day, tricks and treats. We've done episodes about that. Biggest crowds on Saturdays. So if you're listening to this upon drop, which is opening day for haunt, the second day, as a reminder, is Toyota Day. So the park doesn't open to the public until 7 p.m. And sometimes it takes quite a while to even get into the park that day.
That's the one thing that you got to be careful about is, or be aware of if you're going to Halloween haunt. On the opening night, it gets pretty backed up in the concourse outside, you know, the plaza area, you know, trying to get into the event. So when the gates open at, you know, I don't know what time they open the gates now, 5:30, 5:45, whatever time it's going to be, you know, it's pretty backed up. The Saturday night, because they have that park sellout event, that if, you know, it says it opens at 7, you know, whatever time you get there, you know, you're going to wait about 45 minutes to an hour to get in, you know, so you get there early, you get there at 6 waiting to get in, it's an hour, you know, you get there at 6:45 to get in, you're not getting in until about 7:30. You know, it's just 7:45, something like that. It's just really backed up. You can just Google online opening night of haunt, and you'll just see just massive amounts of people and everything trying to get in. So if you're only going to go to haunt once, pick another Saturday to go. You know, it's not going to be a great night. You're going to lose an hour anyway, because it starts at 7 instead of 6. And if you are going to do the Conjuring maze, you know, keep in mind that there's people that are in the park already from the park sellout. You know, they may have bought tickets for that already. They're going to be in line already. So, you know, if you do it right away, you still might not get out of there till 9:30, 10 o'clock, and then you've only got a couple hours left. So I would pick another night to go and not try to do it tomorrow night, because I just think that, you know, with the other event that's going on during the day, the park sellout, and then just the crowd that's going to get there. And if you want to do the Conjuring, you know, there's not going to be a lot of time for you to do much else if that's what you're going to do.
I'm concerned that the Conjuring is going to end up pulsing people a lot more quickly than they intended because of these wait times, or they're going to rework it by the second weekend and have it more of a walkthrough thing.
Well, that would change what it is. If they were to do
I-
that, then
I
it's not,
know.
it's not what it was. So I don't think you can tamper with that. I mean, it's set up a certain way. We've heard very similar things about the experience from both Carowinds and Cedar Point. You know, everyone's talking about how immersive it is, the storytelling, you know, how they have a guided tour taking you around, you know, through it. So I would think if they just made it more of a walkthrough just to try to increase capacity, then it's just another maze after that.
Yeah, or they could do what Cedar Point did. And I don't know if you heard this, but Cedar Point, at least on their website, removed the Conjuring from the all-season option. So basically,
Yes.
if you bought it believing that you got the express pass for all the haunt mazes as well as one time through the Conjuring each visit. And then they took that language out. That sounds familiar. It's exactly what they did in 2022 with the Prestige Pass. So again, always take your screenshots and just, I mean, that's why I always say to wait, you know, because nowadays, I mean, $100, which is what they're charging for it as of this recording at least, may be worth it for the Conjuring plus the other mazes. But if they take the Conjuring out and it's just the other mazes, like I couldn't fathom paying $100 for that, even with Express and all season.
As you learned the hard way, Ryan, terms and conditions are always subject to change.
Yeah, and they won't even apologize or address it or anything because you're stupid if you spend money there, as according to some people.
Yeah,
but
so just as a reminder, you know, tonight's going to be, you know, pretty busy night, I think. But tomorrow night, being a Saturday, park sellout, you know, already, you know, people there. Just expect a big crowd, you know, waiting to get in when the gates open at 7. Could take an hour or so to get in. So my recommendation would be go another night, you know, so it's not 8 o'clock and you're down to 4 hours or whatever, you know, before you even get inside the park to do things.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on to a segment we like to call Buy or Sell.
All right, Ryan. Six Flags will hold off any major retheming of areas of all of the parks for the next 5 years because of the possibility that they sell off some parks.
I'm going to buy, so I think that's a factor, but I think that they're going to hold off on retheming major areas of parks because they're way over their skis right now. I said this in a previous episode. I really think that they're doing this Peanuts thing as a short-term thing. First of all, to save a little bit of money because it's half the length of the previous term, but also because I think they're going to A/B test the two IPs and see which one sells better, which one has a better sentiment, and so on. And that's what they're ultimately going to go with. So I'm going to buy, but with the caveat of this selling off the parks thing is part of it, but not all of it. What do you think?
It's not all of it. So I'm going to buy that they are going to hold off on that. I think just you know, where they are financially and that's the last thing they need to be looking at is you know, spending a lot of money to retheme areas like Action Zone at Kings Island, Area 72, whatever they, you know, might see as a prospect to change up. I don't know that you know, and the longer that it's you know, they've been merged, the more I think about it. And after the Peanuts license was renewed, I don't know that it's a bad thing to have some different things in different parks. You know, I don't think it's, you know, Cedar Point, you know, or Kings Island, that they don't have DC Universe. I don't think that's a bad thing, you know, because that, you know, if you're going to go to some of these other parks, you get to experience things that you don't see at your other park. You get the different characters at the Legacy Six Flags parks with Looney Tunes. You get the Peanuts with the Legacy Cedar Fair parks. So I think there's some upside with that, you know, at least over the short term, to try to have, you know, some unique identities at some of the parks, you know, that not everybody's rolling out the same thing. Not everybody has a coaster called Batman or Superman, you know, and everybody's got kind of their own unique identity. I think, to me, that would be important, you know, especially when you're trying to make connections with guests and everything, that if it's just, you know, similarities everywhere, you know, why travel to other parks sometimes?
I think that's true. I also think that the vast majority of the crowd does not care where they're not going to go to, well, Kings Island has Looney Tunes. So, and Cedar Point has peanuts, so we like Looney Tunes better. We're going to go there. Nobody's going to do that.
No,
It's
that
such a
doesn't
small
matter on
minority.
that. And I also think, it's a nice carrot to throw out there. It looks impressive when you're, doing these investor calls to say our passes now get you into 40 plus parks. Nobody's going to 40 plus parks. The majority, over 98% will only go to 2, maybe 3 different parks, if that.
I wonder how much the All Park Passport really sells out, because I feel like Kings Island and Cedar Point are extraordinarily unique with their proximity. And I think there's some parks in California that are like that too. Maybe Kings Dominion and Carowinds, although that's a pretty big haul. But I really wonder what percentage of people that even matters to.
Yeah, I mean, it looks good on paper. It's added value, but I don't think it matters to the majority.
I really don't think so. And that's why I wonder if this MVP sale that they had, which, by the way, when they announced the sale, they kind of implied that the All Park Passport was included just for the sale. As of this recording, the sale's over, the price went up, the All Park Passport is still included, which is what they would have to do, because it would lead to so much confusion if they did it in another way. What they're doing is they're kicking the can down the road to have the confusion next year when they try to reintroduce it again, or deal with people who are upset. Like, I bought my gold pass last year, it got me into all these parks. You're saying it doesn't do that anymore?
I wonder if, and this is just hearing from some different people that are close to the situation, we'll say, that, I would not be surprised if, they came out and they said gold passes are only valid until Labor Day. But if you renew now, you can get the rest of, post Labor Day and get the fall and the holiday events for the parks that have those. So I can see that being, used as a carrot to get people to renew, that it doesn't go all the way through, that it's like the Silver Pass where it ends on Labor Day. Prestige would be a little bit different, that would be like year round, but I would not be surprised if, in the foreseeable future, that gold was only good up until Labor Day, unless you bought for the next season.
I don't hate the idea as a marketer. Ironically, as a communicator, though, you took a minute and a half to explain that. Just imagine them doing it.
Oh, I know.
I think it would be disastrous.
Not saying that's going to happen, so don't be out there, and people do it all the time.
No protests.
No, but people do it all the time, saying Tower Topics said. We just said this is something that we could envision. It's not that they're going to do it. Don't, be throwing it out there and saying that Tower Topics said that's happening, because it's not happening right now. We're just saying there would be no surprise if that was to happen in the foreseeable future. And foreseeable future doesn't mean tomorrow.
Or even next season, really. I mean,
Right.
They're going to have to dig themselves out of this hole that they put themselves in this year, next year. So we know that in 10 years, there's going to be a regional pass. The pass that gets you into all the properties, let's say that all 40 plus properties stick together by some miracle. That pass is going to be very expensive in 10 years. The one that gets you into Kings Island and Cedar Point will be, I could see them starting off in the $30, $40 range. It'll be $100 ultimately, the Ohio Pass.
Mm-hmm.
But anything that they're going to take motion on, they can't go from, all the parks are included with $100 pass to $119 pass only gets you your home park, and then it's another $100 for all the parks. I mean, they can't even do that.
That's what happens when you give away the gate, is that you can't go back, or you can't do what you should be doing.
They set the pricing back a decade is what they did, or more, because it was underpriced anyway.
They've wrecked it. They've wrecked their markets.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, Don. I don't know if you've ever put your thought in on this, but I really think that the MVP sale, if it does end up being successful, will be because the gold pass is a little bit cheaper, and the prestige pass is a lot bit cheaper than previous years. I don't think that the all park thing moves the needle for the vast majority of people.
I agree with you, Ryan. It is not something that moves the needle for the vast majority. Most are just looking, when they bought that, we're just looking at Kings Island, and then a percentage. It'd be nice to go to Cedar Point once or twice a year, kind of a thing.
So on top of that, with your theory, with what you're hearing, not only is it assuming that people really want to go to Cedar Point or Carowinds or King's Dominion or whatever, but it also assumes that they specifically want to do it in hot time or Winterfest time. So I could see if you're like New Jersey or whatever, and they took away your Halloween event, or your Christmas event, and you wanted to go to Winterfest somewhere, like maybe. But I would say that if people are going to make visits, let's take away the coaster enthusiasts, most of which are, listen to this podcast anyway. But for the average family of 4 that gets the All Park Passport or whatever that they have at the time to visit both Kings Island and Cedar Point, they're going to make their 1 or 2 visits during the summer for the most part, because that's when everybody's available. So do you think that would move the needle at all, or do you think it would just cause confusion or hurt sales?
Cause confusion and hurt sales. Too many types of messages out there. You gotta, sometimes simple is the best way to go. Yeah.
The other thing that I noticed is that, and people were asking about this in the season pass group. Okay, there's a gold pass meal plan, and there's an all park meal plan. Like, why is this one more? Like, because they don't understand that you can get into all the parks, so it costs more. They need to do this. They want to do a silver pass, that's fine. I think it's stupid, but whatever. Make the silver pass $100, so it only gets you through Labor Day. Gold pass, $200, gets you to the other events. And then I would say a platinum pass, let's say $300 for that. And if you want to upcharge for the meal plans, it's just, that's what populates when you add the meal to, like, your gold pass costs a little bit more than silver, which, I don't understand why it costs more for the all park, because you can only use it twice a day anyway, regardless of where you are. But this is America. They can do that if they want. But I feel like gold, silver, platinum was probably the best ordeal. This whole nonsense of the passport and all that, that's got to go. It likely is gone. But boy, when they get into this regional stuff, that's going to be disastrous. I had somebody pitch to me the idea of, well, what if you could pick the 2 parks? There's a 2-park option. You could be like, all right, Cedar Point and Carowinds, or a 3-park option. And I was like, just imagine the disaster that would be, them trying to explain that to people. First of all, they'd have social media posts loaded with emojis and misspellings and stuff from all the parks, not just Kings Island. And it would just confuse the hell out of people. It's got to be all the parks or none. I don't think that it's realistic to think that Six Flags is going to be anywhere near 40 plus parks in 10 years or 5 years, or maybe even 3 years. So I would plan around the highest tier pass getting you into all the parks. And then that would streamline it. That's the way I see it. Rant over. All right. I tell you what, we'll be right back with the listener questions. All right. First listener question. Will from Laurel, Maryland said, "Hi, Don and Ryan. Do you think Kings Island will ever get that world-class coaster that will capture the attention of the golden tickets and actually win Best New Coaster or Best Steel Coaster of its prospective year? Maybe Vekoma or Mock. I think they might have a really good lineup, but I don't think they have any major coasters that take it over the top like Cedar Point, Magic Mountain, Busch Gardens, Tampa, or even Hershey Park."
This is an interesting thing because, you hear that, especially, from coaster enthusiasts, that, Kings Island needs to do this or that to put them on the map and all this. And, they're on the map, they draw well. Is their coaster lineup better than Cedar Point? I think it depends on what kind of coasters you like. If you're a wooden coaster fan, Kings Island's a better coaster lineup for you than Cedar Point,
because you do not have an option at Cedar Point. Well,
outside of Blue Street. Blue Street. So, it depends on what your interest is, when you're comparing these other parks to what Kings Island has or doesn't have. So I think it's more your personal, preference with that. Now, do I think that there'll come a time that they could build a new coaster that could compete for one of those Golden Ticket Awards? Sure. That could happen, 2028, 2029, 2030, whenever the financing and everything gets back in order and they're able to have their reset and, they can start doing some other things. So, it again would depend on what it's up against, which markets they're up against. That has a lot to do with things. Um, like if you're opening a new ride next year, Kings Island can have something right now that is exactly what you're talking about, Vekoma, or somebody comes in, but you're going up against a $50 million attraction at Dollywood. You're going up against a Giga dive coaster at Six Flags over Texas. Those are markets that, the Golden Ticket Awards and that get a lot of, votes for attractions that are in Texas, that are in, at Dollywood. So, I mean, it's just really hard to say, what would it take to get that? I think you'd have to have a year where you weren't going up against something that was at one of those, parks. Pennsylvania, that's a tough market to crack, for the Golden Ticket Awards. Such a deep, deep and loyal base of, coaster enthusiasts there that just, they love Knoebels, they love Hershey Park, they love Kennywood. And there's good reasons why you love those parks. So it's just really hard to say, when it comes to those kind of things. I think when you look at Kings Island's coaster lineup, I don't find it that it comes up short in any fashion. If I want to ride steel coasters, there's a couple of really good ones there with Diamondback and Orion. I love wooden coasters, so I like what they have with the Beast, Mystic Timbers, and the Racer. I don't know. Remains to be seen.
One thing you said a couple months ago, and this has actually been living rent free in my head for like 6 weeks now, so thanks for that. But it actually did spark a little bit of hope for me. And I think you're absolutely right about it. Was, somebody else, maybe even I, presented the question, like, what would it take for them to need to be competitive with Kings Island? And you said, if they build a hotel on site, then they need to fill those rooms, which means they need to bring in people from out of town, which means they won't have the mentality of, okay, the season pass holders are going to be here anyway, using their meal plans and stuff. I absolutely think of hotels in the future within the next 5 to 10.
I do too. And I think that makes a difference too, because then you become more of a destination again, like they were when they had the Kings Island Inn across the street, and the days when the Beast, debuted, and Vortex and that, there was, place to stay there that was affiliated with the park. And, you were getting more of the travelers from all over the country. Cedar Point is a destination. People stay there 2 or 3 days. So, you need to have something like that too going for you. You look at Dollywood, they've got the resorts and that, people go on vacation, they stay there and visit Dollywood 2 or 3 times, during the week, and do those other things in Pigeon Forge. So there's a lot of built-in advantages when you have your own accommodations, on site, like you have at Cedar Point, like you have at Dollywood.
The Carowinds,
Yeah.
Wonderland, that's what makes me think, because we're making a lot of dominoes fall within the chain, whether it's Six Flags or Legacy Cedar Fair, where there are very few parks that don't have a hotel now. And it does seem like the ones that have the hotel, if they have the lodging on site, are getting competitive. When Kings Island is saturated, that's not a good thing for business. That means it's stagnant. So if they want to grow Kings Island, they have to draw people from zip codes outside of, Warren County and Montgomery County and so on. So a hotel would be a good way, because they can generate a lot of revenue with that. I believe them. I don't know for sure, but I believe that hotels are pretty high margin. That's out of park spending, which is a whole different line item when it comes to the Six Flags Corporation. So they have to fill up that hotel. I would say 200-300 rooms or so.
Mm-hmm.
And that would make it so they're competitive again. Now, will they put in the coaster that is, they said ever's a long time. We say that all the time. And, we don't know what the landscape's going to look like 10 years from now. I would say with the mentality of the leadership that's in place now. I'm not talking about Tony Carvellano. I'm talking about with the corporate outs that they have now. No, they're not going to put in anything that's the best of anything, because Kings Island saturated. With that being said, if you don't like what I have to say, there's a very good chance that the leadership that I'm talking about won't be there in a year, no matter who it comes to mind. So maybe they'll think differently. The numbers aren't going to lie. Kings Island will always be very saturated, but all it's going to take is, think of it like Winterfest. Don, I remember you telling me when they canceled Winterfest the first time, when you were still with Cedar Fair, you were like, there's no way they'll ever bring it back. No, nobody wants to do it. Nobody will. And then they brought in Matt we met who said, you mean we got these parks that just sit there in December not making any money? And then all of a sudden they had Winterfest back. You know,
yeah, you had a lot of people that, you know, a lot of them now, you know, retired and have moved on. But, you know, they weren't excited about Winterfest because, you know, it is kind of a, you know, when you work for a park, it's great as a guest. You can go, you know, whenever you want and all that. But when you work at a park and you add, you know, another 6-week event like Winterfest, you know, now you put it, you know, to where, you know, people were used to getting their vacations in November, December. Now they can't take them. But then it's tough to take them in, you know, January, February, March. You know, a lot of things you would want to do are closed in January, February.
Well, and that's
you know,
the
so
time
it just really, yeah, but it really hurts. You know, when you have those kind of an events, you got to think about your staff too.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, you know, you burn people out. You know, you got to be wired a certain way, you know, for that not to burn you out. You know, for me, I grew up with parks. It's, you know, so I, you know, very passionate about it. It didn't bother me, you know, because I was going to be there anyway as a guest if I didn't work there, you know, so it was fine for me. But a lot of other people, you know, it was just tough for them to just add those extra weeks.
And I believe that the compensation that they gave them was they hired more, because it does seem like, I remember.
Yeah, there were more people hired, so you could take your vacations in the summer and that, which you know, was a plus in that. But now you don't have those extra bodies again. You know, they cut a number of people across the chain.
I wonder if, I mean, it'd be hard for them to be like, you know, our 8 operating months, you can't take your vacation. I don't think they can backpedal on that. I think that if somebody wanted to take a vacation during the summer, during Winterfest, they would just let them and be without that person, you know, to the detriment of the park. Not a referendum on anybody in the park or the park itself, but I think that's the reality of what we're doing. But yeah, but you know, back to the matter at hand. I think that a hotel, once they get back on, they get their sea legs back.
Mm-hmm.
I think that a hotel is something that Kings Island sorely needs. Great Wolf Lodge is full all the time, and you could call that saturated, but at the same time, you could say, well, the demand is there. So Great Wolf Lodge is pulling away the revenue that Kings Island would be getting, because people do staycations at Great Wolf Lodge, sure, but I bet a lot of them during the summer are staying there because they're going to Kings Island. So Kings Island could do that. They could lock in ticket sales and stuff. They get the revenue from the rooms. Like I said, I speculate that it's probably high margin, and on that case, they need to do things that would draw people from zip codes that would stay there, you know. So I think you inspired a little bit of hope for me for the long-term future of Kings Island when it comes to that, because I think that's not too far down the road. I think as soon as they get out of the woods, that's something that they need to look out for Kings Island. And as soon as they do that, I think the attitude towards Kings Island will change.
They need that far more than they need to put a coaster or major attraction in the vortex spot.
Well, they need to put in the hotel before that, certainly.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, that's what I just said. That they need that long before they need to do the other thing that everybody wants.
All right. Well, we answered more than Will's question from Laurel. But our next question is actually a voicemail.
Hi, this is Gary from Wattsburg, PA, and I have a question that I don't think was addressed before. We all talked about the haunted attractions being an upcharge, and I was planning a visit, and I noticed that there are specific dates. So my question is, what happens if you buy a haunted attractions pass? It's good for one day, and then it turns out the lines are long. You can't get through all the houses. So basically, then you're going to be paying and not getting all the houses. Thanks. I enjoy your show, and thank you for taking my question.
Yeah.
He's exactly right. That there, will be, some nights where you might not be able to do all of the haunted mazes, houses, however you want to term those. The Columbus weekend Saturday, that's going to be one of those nights that it's going to be very difficult, if you
I
want to
don't
do
know,
every
Don.
single
Evidence shows that maybe he can do that.
well, maybe, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think that, it doesn't guarantee you that you get into every one of them. So, I think you
Well,
have to choose your night.
I'm gonna play devil's advocate with this. If you go to the park on a Saturday in July and you don't get to ride Banshee because you rode a bunch of other stuff and time ran out, I mean, first of all, did you really not have a full experience by not riding Banshee? Like, it sucks, but it's not the end of the world.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna be able to get to most of them, but I think there might be still, nights where, as hard as you try, especially if you're doing The Conjuring and you lose, an hour and a half, 2 hours, trying to do that. Now you're down to 4 hours. I would imagine.
Well, especially
that,
if you throw some rides in there, because the ride lines are going to be really
yeah,
long.
exactly. And if you try to, if you want to do, so you do The Conjuring, I would imagine it'll be about a 45 minutes to an hour wait on a lot of nights, minimum for, a couple of the other mazes. So, it's gonna happen. You're just not gonna be able to do it all.
Yeah. I'm sure that the policy is that you use them or lose them. It may be a squeaky wheel gets the grease situation where if you get a guest services say, hey, I bought this, I did The Conjuring, had to wait 2.5 hours, and then I only got to do one other maze, like they may help you out. I wouldn't hang my hat on that, but yeah, that's why you got to get The Conjuring out of the way first, is what it looks like now. The early reports are indicating that.
Head there first, because I don't think that line's going to get any shorter as you get deeper in the hunt. It's only going to get longer.
Yeah, but that's a really good question. I'm glad you asked that. Next question, Brian from Hamilton, Ohio. He said, I worked at the Tower Carousel area from 2008 to 2014 and enjoyed working that section for the time I was there. Next year, the Grand Carousel will turn 100 years old. And my question is, will there be a 100th birthday celebration? If so, I'd love to be there to celebrate. Carousel was a great part of my life, and I want to come celebrate with you. P.S. I wrote a book that's on Amazon and Barnes & Noble called All Clear, Experiences of a Ride Operator. Check it out. It's not a very long book, but I'm sure it'll be entertaining nonetheless. Don,
heard of the
talk
book.
about that. I'm gonna pull it. Well, it's the same name as Matt Heller's book, The All Clear. But let's find his book. Why don't you answer his question first?
Well, I mean, we certainly hope. You only turn 100 once, right?
Yeah.
A lot of history, tradition, nostalgia, multi-generational with the Grand Carousel. A lot of people, as Brian here, worked on the ride. Maybe for some, it was their first ever job that they had. Just so much, wrapped up into the Grand Carousel. Some, like me, remember riding it at Cincinnati's Coney Island. So it, I certainly hope that they do a big celebration for it next year. I do know that there were some at the park that when I asked if they had any plans for that, they didn't even know that it turned 100 next year. So I don't know. I mean, they don't have the boots on the ground that they once had. A lot of it, the marketing and PR and that gets done off-site. So I don't know. I just hope that they do something. They make it a special year. It's not something that it's just one day for a celebration. And it's one and done, and then they forget about it. I would like to see something that there's the pre-launch. Talk about the carousel. There's the launch, when it turns 100, and then they sustain that all summer with, different things that they do. I certainly would hope that there's, some T-shirts in that, celebrating the 100th anniversary, at minimum. So there's a lot of things they can do. It's just a question of, number one, will they do it? Do they have people that can put the time into it? Do they have people that even know that's the 100th anniversary that would be involved in these kind of things? So hopefully if they listen to this podcast, we know they listen. Hopefully they take notes and, start to work on that, because now's the time you have to start working on that. You want to come out rolling in January, and there's a lot of stories that you can do with the carousel leading up to the opening of the season.
Yeah. And just to plug his book, I haven't read this, so I can't vouch for how good or bad it is, but got to support anybody that writes their own book. But All Clear, Experience of a Ride Operator. This is on Amazon. It's by Brian Mulvaney. And it looks like it's available through Kindle Unlimited, or $8.99 to buy through Kindle, or a paperback version is $10. Maybe 10 o'clock by the time I get done trying to spit this out. But that's very cool. I'm sure there's some interesting stories from being a ride operator out there.
And Brian, I was aware of your book. I will certainly make a purchase and talk about the book on an upcoming episode.
Yeah. And if you got your own questions or buy or sell or story or anything like that, send them to hosts, HOSTS, at towertopics.com. That's hosts at towertopics.com. Your first name, the city you're from, as well as your question, your story, your comment, or whatever. Too hip to send emails? Well, I am too. That's why we have a phone number. You can send a text or a voicemail to 513-399-7538. That's 513-399-7538. If you send us a text, we'll read it just like we did some of these. If you send us a voicemail, we might play it on the air, just like we did with, the question about haunt. So make sure that you do that.
Yeah, I'd like to see
wait,
more
there's more.
voicemails coming in, Ryan. I really like when we get those questions. Part of it for me is that not knowing what that question is going to be when we get the emails. We certainly see it, as we're putting the show notes and that together. But the voicemails are always good because I have no idea what's coming. So I love those.
That's how I feel about the listener questions most of the time, Don. All right. Tell them about the Facebook group, though.
That's something that we hope that if you're a fan of Tower Topics, that you want to join the Facebook group. Passionate Kings Island fans just like yourself, are in that group. It's a great place. If you have questions, there's several members there that, if Ryan and I don't have the answer, there's others there that are more than happy to help you out. We want it to be a place, the camaraderie, make it a community where you feel it's a safe environment for you, that you can give your opinion. It's not going to be, something that is going to be removed because it was, negative or whatever. As long as everybody's respectful to everybody, you have a place there in the Tower Topics Facebook group. So just search it and join the group and, start participating in the conversations, whatever you want to share, your experience at the park. Maybe you have a favorite meal, you have some tips you want to offer people. You're going to haunt tomorrow, and you want to pass along some tips. That's a perfect place to do it. Share in that Facebook group.
Yeah. We got an online store launching soon. More information on that to come. You should follow our field reporter, Noah the field reporter on YouTube. Perspective of the world through a 10-year-old, has some interesting comment, to say the least. We drop episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday early in the morning. So I'm Ryan Sir, along with Don Helbig, and this is Tower Topics.